we're starting to learn the second part of the Melocha of Tzod-Trapping, and that deals with the nature of the animal trapped. Remember when we started learning Tzod about trapping, I said that there are three considerations. Number one, what is the level of the confinement of the animal? And that divides into two. Where was the animal to start with on Shabbos before you trapped it? Where is it going to end up after you trap it? So if you trap an animal from a large area where it's considered free until you trap it, if you confine it to a large area, it's still not considered trapped, it's still free, even though it's a smaller area than the one you started with. So you need both conditions, that it be free when you start, that it be confined by the time you finish. So those are the two considerations. The third one is this the kind of animal that is normally trapped? So people don't usually trap beetles for any purpose. They have nothing to do with beetles. So it is not the kind of species which is normally trapped, and therefore the Melocha of Tzod min ha-Torah does not apply to it. It may be also midrabona, like most conditions of Melochos, which make a Melocha not be considered Melocha min ha-Torah, but nevertheless it's forbidden midrabonon as a gzeira. But it's not a Melocha min ha-Torah if it is not the type that is normally trapped. Now, a fourth consideration, which doesn't really belong only to the Melocha of Tzod, but it's a general one. However, in the case of trapping, it becomes more prevalent, and that is if you don't need the trapped animal, the Melocha of Tzod, it means that you're trapping the animal because you need the animal, or you need its hide, or its horn, or any other part of it. So you need to trap the animal to use it. Let's say you're trapping the animal in order to avoid it. You don't want it invading your space or taking a bite out of you or other such things, but you're looking to avoid damage or harm which the animal could cause. You don't need the animal. It's a Melocha she'eino tzricha legufa. A Melocha done not for the purpose of the Melocha. And throughout Hilchos Shabbos, we have the argument between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda whether such a Melocha is considered Melocha min ha-Torah. Rabbi Yehuda says yes, as long as you're doing the Melocha deliberately for whatever purpose, the purpose doesn't change anything. Rabbi Shimon says only if you're doing it for the purpose of the item in which you're doing the Melocha. If you're sewing a fabric because you are looking to use the stone fabric, you're putting together a garment, then it's a Melocha done for its purpose. If you do a Melocha just to avoid the undesirable aspect of having it or having it the way it is, in our case, if you're trapping an animal, even if it's an animal that is normally trapped, it's a species which is normally trapped, let's say for its fur. Nevertheless, if you are trapping it in order to avoid damage or harm, Melocha she'eino tzricha legufa, according to Reb Shimon, you are potur, it is not considered a Melocha min ha-Torah. And this is part of Meleches Machsheves, the condition of all Melochos of Shabbos, that they are thought through Melochos, according to Reb Shimon, that also means purposeful Melochos, done for the regular purpose of the Melocha or for the purpose for which it was done in the Mishkan. There's an argument between Rishonim, which is the criterion. At any rate, according to Reb Shimon, if you will trap an animal not because you want it, but because you want it out of your way, you would be potter. It is not a Melocha min ha-Torah. Most Rishonim rule like the ruling of Reb Shimon. The Rambam rules like Reb Yehuda. That's a major dispute. According to the Rambam, many things which we would consider not to be Melocha min ha-Torah are in fact Melocha min ha-Torah. Everybody agrees that it's also midrabanan. So what's the difference whether it's min ha-Torah or midrabanan that we've learned in the past? The difference is when you make an exception, when you permit it. The min ha-Torah Melochos are permissible only in a case of pikuach nefesh, a threat to life. Melochos drabonon, which are forbidden midrabanan, may be permitted under several kinds of extenuating circumstances, as we learned in the previous Shiur. So now that's the fourth consideration, but it's not a consideration only for the Melocha of Tzod. It's a consideration in all Melochos. But like I said, there are so many things which we catch, which we trap, just because they are a nuisance or harmful, that it becomes very prevalent in the Melocha of Tzod to think about whether it's tzricha legufa, you need it, or you're just avoiding. So we're moving on to the second idea of, or according to my calculation, the third idea of Tzod. What is the species which you are trapping? Is it normally trapped or not? So we begin a chapter on 871. Eleni, how are we doing?
Rabbi, I'm not able to read. I'm actually sick. I'm so sorry.
Shane, before Shleimer, thanks for joining anyhow.
Thank you. No, I'm lying down listening. Thank you.
Okay. And send her apologies, she's away. So who's our Balkoira for today?
I will.
Okay, Peggy, go ahead.
Okay. The principle of species, Mino Nitzod. As explained earlier, the Melocha of Tzod is governed by two primary principles, the principle of confinement and the principle of species. The second principle, the principle of species, dictates the kind of animal species subject to the Melocha of Tzod. Hunted species and non-hunted species. Not all animals and living creatures are subject to the Melocha of Tzod. Only species that are usually trapped for some use or purpose called Mino Nitzod, hunted species, are subject to the Melocha of Tzod. Example, trapping a rabbit is the Melocha of Tzod because this animal is commonly trapped for its fur or for food. Similarly, catching a parrot or parakeet would be Tzod because these birds are popular house pets and are commonly trapped for this purpose. However,
let me stop you for a minute. You realize that the term commonly trapped is not restricted to Yidden. A Yid is not going to trap a rabbit for its meat, chas v'sholem. But in the world, generally, Goyim do trap rabbits for that purpose, besides fur. And therefore, we don't take into consideration only what Yidden do, but what the world at large does. However,
However,
Mhm.
animals that generally have no use to people and are not usually hunted, called ein mina nitzod, non-hunted species, such as insects, are not included in the Melocha of Tzod Midoraisa. Even so,
Before you go
forcibly,
further, that means that even though you do have a purpose for it, you're going to use this beetle. How? Why? I don't know. You'll find a way. There's the famous story with Rabbeinu Gershom, who was confined in a tower, a hunger tower. And his wife came to him and he instructed her to get him some food, first of all, by getting a beetle to run up the tower, pulling a string, and the string pulls a rope, and the rope pulls a basket, and the basket has food. And you can find uses for a beetle. So even though you have a beetle, you have use for the beetle, but the beetle as a species is not under the category of tzod, because people generally do not trap beetles in order to get food to hunger towers. Carry on.
even so, forcibly confining any living creature, even insects, is rabbinically prohibited because this resembles the Melacha. Therefore, catching an annoying fly or moth that is flying around the room, even with the intention of immediately releasing it outdoors, is prohibited on Shabbos.
Okay, so someone asked last week, I think Lexi asked last week, what about catching something in order to get rid of it from the house? So you're catching it and you're releasing it. So he's telling you here that even if your purpose is to immediately release it outdoors, it's prohibited on Shabbos. Now you realize that if you trap that annoying moth, it's a double the Rabbanon. Meaning there are two reasons why Minat Torah it would not be Melocha. Number one, moths are not generally of the species which is trapped. Number two, you don't need the moth. You're only trapping it to get rid of it. So it's a Melocha she'ena tzricha legufa, which is again a derabbanon, like I said, according to most of the Rishonim, the Stakalochas, like Reb Shimon. So even if it were not the Melocha of Tzod, which has a peculiarity that it only applies to certain kinds of animals, even if you were getting rid of a nuisance in a way that was part of some other Melocha, like carrying outside, if you took something outside because it's annoying you, not because you needed it outside, that would not be the Melocha Minat Torah of carrying. Likewise, if you got rid of the moth, you trapped the moth in order to get rid of it, it would not be the Melocha of Tzod because it's a Tzricha legufa. On top of that, it's also a moth which nobody traps.
Rabbi, can
So
I ask
it's a
you?
double double. Yeah.
Please, if you have a child, it's an insect, it's flying around, and the child is absolutely traumatized by it, what do you do then?
We're going to learn about it.
Thank you.
But Rabbi Weinberg,
Yes, Faith.
Rabbi Weinberg, you know what? I've been bitten by mosquitoes so badly here now. And am I allowed to trap it, catch it, kill it?
No, apply a mosquito repellent or light a candle that gives off a citronella and chases away the mosquitoes. Chasing a mosquito is a silly idea in any case because he'll bring a lot of his friends. You'll spend your night chasing mosquitoes. By the way, another thing that works wonderfully is the fan.
Oh.
For some reason, if you have a fan on in your room where you sleep, the mosquitoes won't bother you.
Oh.
Right?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Although it is prohibited to capture any species, there are some halachic differences between those that are forbidden by Torah law and those that are rabbinically restricted, as will be explained below. B, trapping harmful insects. Although trapping insects is prohibited, as noted earlier, there are some instances where it may be permitted to trap an insect. Stinging insects such as yellow jackets of the wasp family and hornets that can inflict substantial pain may be trapped by covering them with an empty cup. However, one should not trap them with a device that is designed for trapping bees and insects. Similarly, if a mosquito is hovering near a small child who may suffer a reaction from a mosquito bite, trapping the mosquito would be permitted. Hornets or wasps near a small child may even be killed if necessary, because their sting can be dangerous to a small child. The same is true of an adult who may suffer an allergic reaction to an insect sting. See Shoichet. This is because these species of insects are of the non-hunted variety, which are only rabbinically restricted, because they become easily incited and are prone to sting. Trapping them is permitted because the sages do not extend their restriction in the face of substantial physical pain and discomfort.
So this is one of the exceptions to the Rabbanon prohibition that Lo Yehamidu Devreim B'mokim Tar. Chachomim did not apply their gzeiros, their dinim, in the face of pain. Next, trapping honeybees.
Honeybees. According to
before we read inside, you understand that honeybees are in a different category because they are normally trapped. People want them for their honey. So that would put them into a category of a de'oraisa. They are of the species which is normally hunted. But now it's going to depend on why you are trapping them. Are you trapping them in order to have them, or are you trapping them in order to avoid them? So that's what we'll see further. According to some
poskim, honeybees are considered mina nitzod hunted species because they are commonly cultivated, hence trapped by beekeepers to produce honey. According to these poskim, honey-producing bees may not be trapped even when there is a threat of being stung, because trapping these bees under ordinary conditions is the Melacha of Tzod-Trapping. However, most poskim rule that honeybees are not hunted species because bees are never meant to be truly confined, even while being cultivated for their honey. Bees require unrestrained freedom of movement to forage for food and nectar in order to keep their hives functioning. And it is in the beekeeper's best interest to allow for this freedom. Thus, the beekeeper does not actually trap the bees, but merely fosters an environment for them to live and reproduce in their natural manner. According to the poskim that hold that honeybees are not mina nitzod, bees may be trapped to avoid being stung by them. The halachic rulings that evolve from this view are elaborated in see below. Bees and wasps in the sukkah. Many people can attest to the fact that bees and wasps are often a serious nuisance on the Yom Tov of Sukkot. It is therefore important to know what is permissible to do and what is forbidden when one sukkah experiences an intrusion of bees or wasps. The problem and its causes. Because the Yom Tov table is laden with warm food and honey and other sweets, bees and wasps are naturally attracted towards the sukkah. With troublesome bees buzzing close by, one understandably becomes very uncomfortable and feels under constant threat of being stung while eating. While it is true that bees and wasps do not ordinarily sting unless provoked, it is also a fact that they require minimal provocation. Since the bees tend to fly around a person at very close proximity, it is indeed difficult to continue the meal in an ordinary manner without fear of provoking the bees. Some people suggest that the sweets, particularly sweet wines, soft drinks, and fruit juices, be removed from the table so as to prevent the continued presence of the bees. While this effort may help somewhat, it is not likely to discourage the bees entirely because wasps also require protein as part of their diet. In addition to being drawn to sweets, worker bees, i.e. yellow-jacket workers, which are a species of wasps, also forage for protein to take to their nest. It is therefore not surprising that bees will appear when the main courses of fish and meat are placed on the sukkah table. Apparently, wasps are especially attracted when the dishes are warm and aromatic and will come even if no honey or sweet drinks are on the table.
So you need some duology for Hilchos Shabbos. Okay.
Trapping the bees on Shabbos and Yom Tov. As a first step, one may place a bowl or bottle of honey or sweet soda outside of the sukkah to hopefully divert the bees from entering. This is permitted even though the bees might become caught in the honey because the trapping of the bees is neither intentional nor inevitable. It is if the unwelcome bees are already inside the sukkah and show no intention of leaving, one may then cover them with a cup or bowl if one feels threatened by them. Strictly speaking, one need not be halachically concerned that the covered bee may suffocate. Even so, it is proper to release the bee after the metal is completed to prevent this. After the meal is completed to prevent this. Various bee and wasp traps have recently been developed which have proven to be very effective in controlling the problem of bees. Their use is highly recommended. However, these traps should be set before Shabbos and Yom Tov.
In other words, even though when you put down the trap, you're not actually catching the bee, let's say, but the normal way of trapping bees is to set a trap. To trap many animals is by setting a trap, not necessarily by hitting over their head with a net. So that's the normal way of doing the Melocha of Tzod. Although you don't catch the animal immediately, nevertheless, it's a Melocha min ha-Torah. So don't set the trap on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So that's in the case of an insect that can sting. It's painful, but not dangerous. If a person doesn't suffer an allergic reaction, it's not dangerous. People who do suffer allergic reactions, as we've had here with a Hatzolah worker who is unfortunately still incapacitated from bee bites a couple of years back. And it says it's life-threatening. So for such people, for sure, you're allowed to catch and kill because pikuach nefesh overrides all the other considerations of Shabbos. But if it's just a matter of being stung, even though it's painful, but not dangerous, so we have to avoid trapping the bee. Dangerous animals.
Dangerous animals or insects. If an animal or insect can cause serious harm, and certainly if it can cause life-threatening harm, then trapping is permitted with all species. Even killing them may be permitted. Example, if one is allergic to bee stings, he may trap or even kill. Example, by spraying insecticide. the insect, because of a sting to such an individual, can have serious consequences. Similarly, harmful animals, example, poisonous snakes, scorpions, etc., that can cause serious pain or injury, even if not fatal, may be trapped or even killed to keep them at bay. Regarding killing dangerous animals and insects, see Shoicheit. Non-stinging insects.
Okay,
Only the
Peggy, I'm going to ask you to stop, and I'll take general questions, shilas, of whatever. I'm a chaya. No one has questions.
Hi, Rabbi. I have, please. Sorry.
Yes, Lexi.
We had an insect on our table. Actually, it was a fish mouth on Shabbos, and we couldn't get it off by blowing. Is there another way that you could get it off? I mean, I assume you can't put I wanted to put a paper.
A bug?
Yeah.
So you can put a paper plate or a serviette underneath the bug, carry it outside, and get rid of it. You're not trapping.
Why is it not trapping if it can't get off the paper?
Well, it can walk off the paper, jump off, fly off the paper. In fact, while you're taking it outside, you're hoping that it doesn't jump off or fly off.
Okay, so can you do that with anything, with a spider or anything?
Yeah, you can do that with anything. I don't know if you want to do it with a spider.
Well, for the children, sometimes Grant doesn't have a choice.
No, I mean to take it out with a serviette. The serviette can be smaller than the spider. So, okay, yeah, fine.
Okay, thanks, Rabbi.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Yoni.
I sent a message about the urn, using an urn, a metal urn, and keeping water in it from 1 week to another. Can that water be used?
If the urn is on through the week,
no.
if it's off, then spill out the water and fill it up again.
What is the problem with the water?
What if?
What is the problem with the water?
Oh, we don't use water that has stayed in a metal kli overnight, unless it was boiling.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry. To continue with that question, if it's boiling, could you leave it on a whole week?
Yes.
Or you could still
Just
leave
make
that water
sure you
in?
add water before Shabbos, so you won't tend to run out of water.
Yes. No, I don't think I'll do. Just I would like to know that water is permissible if you leave it boiling for a period of time.
I just want to add one point. If you're leaving it on continuously, you probably have an intake, which automatically feeds the urn with fresh water as the water level goes down, because otherwise you're bound to burn out the element. So if you have such an intake, you're not allowed to use it at all on Shabbos, because the fresh water gets boiled in the urn as you take out boiled water. So that's awesome.
Rabbi Wineberg, I'd also like to ask you, I hope you can see it. This is a glove. Over here, it's a plastic glove. It's plastic, like little brushes. It's to wash your dishes. Now, could one use this on Shabbos? It doesn't really, you can't really see it.
I can see the little brushes.
Yes.
But I imagine that they're not big enough individually to trap water so that you would be wringing the water out of them when you're washing the dishes, number one. Number two, it looks to me like the glove is made of rubber. And in the case of rubber or silicone, there is no
Silicone.
shechita in any case, even if you do trap water between the bristles. So you're allowed to use it. Yeah.
Thank
Rabbi,
you.
I have a question for Ella. Where did you get that glove?
I just found it last week at hypermarket, you know, where the cleaning things are. You know, where the candles are, the aisle next to the candles.
One.
Never seen it before. It's very useful for Shabbos.
Very useful.
Ella, I want you to promote the Shiur as a DIY for it. Okay,
Sorry,
ladies.
Okay.
Have a good week. I'll see you Mitzvah Hashem next Wednesday.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Weinberg.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Tivia.